This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, take the guesswork out of buying baseball or even football tickets with the season rapidly approaching with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, before we get into the Patriots on the field, Greg, of course, the biggest story, and this is all subject to change, folks. We are recording this at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, okay? 5 p.m. Tuesday is when we're recording this. I don't want people tweeting at us and bitching at us if Brandon Aiyuk gets traded somewhere and you say, well, what happened? Where was your reaction? We're recording this thing, and what happens. Mm-hmm. So let's get into Aiyuk. I guess I'll just start with asking, have you heard anything? Do you know anything with your own reporting as far as what the hell is going on here?
Nothing that's really not out there. You know, what I know is that, and this goes back to the offseason. I mean, when we talked about Elliott Wolf and sort of, you know, what we thought the plan was, the Patriots were going to be aggressive in adding a number one wide receiver. And, you know, they've been trying on Brandon Aiyuk the whole time. They've been checking in on him. Didn't look like it was going to happen. You know, as I reported at the time, the San Francisco 49ers were telling anybody who would listen, we're not trading Brandon Aiyuk. And you can understand why, because, you know, they've been knocking on the door of a Super Bowl. They have basically their whole team coming back, and they don't have another wide receiver like Brandon Aiyuk, sort of like that boundary type guy. And so they have, you know, between Christian McCaffrey and Debo and Kittles and Aiyuk, you know, you have an array of different weapons. It's the ideal. And so
right.
they had no idea. They weren't entertaining the thought of trading Brandon Aiyuk. You know, so the Patriots have been in on that. We know they tried with Calvin Ridley. Ridley never wanted to leave the South. Patriots were very aggressive. They've continued to check in on Aiyuk, and, you know, they've been very aggressive in, you know, their trade compensation with the 49ers. Now that the 49ers have, you know, in the past couple of days have opened it up, have said, okay, now we're going to listen. And, you know, I don't exactly know what the 49ers are trying to do. I'm sure we're going to get into more of that. I mean, I think they're to the point. I think they're frustrated with Aiyuk, who's done nothing. He's been a hold-in at camp, as opposed to like Debo Samuel is, you know, when he went through his contract, like he went through everything. And I think they've grown frustrated with him. And I think my guess is that they decided, well, we're going to call his bluff, okay? We're going to arrange trades. He's going to be able to talk contract with other teams. And at the end of the day, it's going to be his decision to go to team X, Y, or Z, where they might be a ways away from a Super Bowl if they ever get there, or he could take what we're offering, which maybe isn't top of the market, but is still pretty good, and stay with us and compete for Super Bowls every year. And so I think they're to the point, Nick, where they're just putting it into his court, putting the pressure on him, calling his bluff to be like, all right, you decide. You want out or do you want in? Make a decision.
So I think the way the reporting has gone, and I don't know how aware of you are for the Twitter insiders, but I know some people on Twitter, they get a bad rap, and they should, because they just throw stuff out there. But there are people that are on Twitter in social media that have legitimate sources and are followed by a lot of people. And there's this one person by the name of Pretty Ricky. It's Pretty Ricky 21 something, couple numbers. And but this person has nailed a ton of stuff well beforehand. And so this person has been on top of the Aiyuk stuff, and they keep saying he's going to the Steelers. He's going to the Steelers. I don't care what anybody says. He's going to the Steelers. You know, I know what people are saying over the last day or so, but The Steelers are the team to watch. It's the Steelers. It's the Steelers. So if you start to put all this stuff together, the reporting is, oh, well, the Steelers, the Commanders, the Patriots, the Browns, they're in this. And then you have Adam Schefter go out there yesterday with Pat McAfee, and Schefter says, hey, look, you can offer Brandon Aiyuk a great contract, but if Aiyuk doesn't want to play for the team that's willing to give him that contract, then he doesn't have to sign there, and he doesn't have to okay that trade. He pretty much has a no-trade clause, is how Schefter has really put it, and I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I've spent a lot of time in radio. I see how reports go. I don't think it's a coincidence that later in the day, last night, Matt Mayoko from NBC Sports Bay Area comes out and says, oh, well, the Steelers, they have not met the demands of the Niners, and the Commanders have taken themselves out of this. This is the Browns, this is the Patriots, and the 49ers have okayed the parameters of these deals. And then today, I found this interesting. Schefter starts his day on McAfee saying, there's no chance. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, Pittsburgh's not in this thing at all. 2 hours later, Schefter's like, Pittsburgh's back in this. So you tell me if I'm wrong. You're the reporter here. You're the guy who deals with sources. I don't. The way I think this is being played out behind the scenes is Aiyuk wants to get paid $30 million a year. Niners don't want to give him $30 million a year. So what happens is Aiyuk starts to leak and even say things on the podcasts that he's been on, like Commanders and Steelers, that's where I want to go. I feel like Ayuk's team, or Aiyuk himself, I'm guessing it's his representation, spoke with Schefter and said, yeah, we know that the Browns and the Patriots are willing to pay him, but he doesn't want to go to Cleveland or New England, which in return, the Niners went to Matt Mayoko and said, well, that's nice that Brandon doesn't want to go to Cleveland or New England, but unfortunately for Brandon, Pittsburgh's not offering us anything that we want. So we're not just going to trade him there to trade him there. So these are his options. I feel like that's where we're at. And Aiyuk wants to go to the Steelers. The Niners are pushing back, saying Pittsburgh is not offering. Andrew Filipponi tweeted out just a little while ago, Greg, that, the Steelers are offering Calvin Austin, young wide receiver who has 17 catches. They're offering James Daniels, and they're offering another offensive lineman. They're offering a backup offensive tackle. They're offering an offensive guard, which San Francisco doesn't need. And they're offering a receiver who has 17 catches in his NFL career. Now, according to Filipponi, the Steelers don't want to move from that. The Niners want Freiermuth or Pickens or a first-round pick. They want one of those three things in return, and Pittsburgh's not budging. So I just think we have a stare down and a stalemate here, which with each side speaking to their, favorite reporter or insider, trying to fight this thing via the media to try to sway people. How do you feel?
I don't disagree with you on any of that. I think there's a whole bunch of games being played. What's interesting, and this is sort of like an inside football thing, but both Brandon Aiyuk and like everyone among the 49ers brass, whether it's John Lynch, who's the general manager, but Kyle Shanahan runs everything there. It's his franchise as far as personnel and all that stuff. Like, he runs everything. They're all represented by the same agency, Athletes First. Now, I'm sure they have different agents. Like, for example, Trace Armstrong represents a lot of coaches and front office people, the former NFL player. And I know Ryan Williams of Athletes First represents Aiyuk. But there's a lot of intermingling going on. So there's that aspect of it. My read on this is the 49ers have called Brandon Aiyuk's bluff.
Yep.
But they're trying to show him that there's limited teams that he can go to. Like, I mean, the Steelers package, if Filipponi's right, like the players that they're offering, it's garbage. I mean,
yep.
The Patriots have similar players they could offer, and I'm sure the 49ers laughed. And, a first round pick is nice, but I think, you got to look at you got to look at the position that the 49ers in and Kyle Shanahan. And we all know his shortcomings, how he keeps coming up short of Super Bowl titles. And like, I have a hard time seeing them being okay not getting a wide receiver in any deal that can approximate what Brandon Aiyuk can do for them. And, and we heard Matt Mayoko say this, like he thinks that the 49ers would prefer the deal with the Browns with Amari Cooper. And, you could see the appeal of Pickens with the Steelers. I do think the Patriots can get there with, I know Kendrick Bourne has been mentioned, and I know Kyle Shanahan loves him. The 49ers love him. I'm sure he'd be, well there. But, I mean, he's hurt. You don't know when he's going to be back. You don't know how he's going to be back. I would love to offer Matthew Judon as a sweetener in that, especially after what transpired again the other day. And then he sat out today at practice. But, I just think, I think Brandon Aiyuk I think he's in fantasy land if he thinks he's, everything's going to come together. Sure, he wants the Steelers, but the Steelers are offering crap. So the 49ers aren't going to do that. So what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose money? Are you going to choose winning? What are you going to do? And I think that's basically where we are right now, is where the 49ers are putting it on Brandon Aiyuk and being like, you make the decision on where you want to go, but at the end of the day, it's your call, and you got to declare what you're about.
Now, interesting, because Michael Silver earlier today, he tweeted out that in a vacuum, or this was last night, in a vacuum, he feels like Shanahan would rather have Bourne in the Patriots' number 2 second-round pick than Cooper in the Browns' second-round pick. I saw you last night on NBC Sports Boston say that Shanahan loves himself some Kendrick Bourne. So I quote tweeted Silver, and I quote tweeted him writing last night on NBC Boston at Greg A. Bedard said that Shanahan loves Kendrick Bourne, loves him in all caps. Silver tweeted back at me in 3 minutes, just three letters. Yep. so in Silver, if people don't know, he is very plugged in to the operation over there in San Francisco.
Yeah,
he's a Bay Area
close. Yeah, he's very close with all those guys. And so is Burt, which is interesting. Burt Breer's been pretty silent on this, which has surprised me considering the Patriots are involved and the 49ers, and Burt's very plugged in with them as well, along with Jeff Darlington.
Well, maybe Burt's busy with Amazon Prime from what I read.
Yeah,
I think it was Amazon.
Maybe. Yeah. Look at him.
So it's, and then you got Josina Anderson saying the Patriots aren't giving up on this. We'll see if they can kind of stretch the limits and bring him in. I feel like the longer this goes, the less likely it is that the Patriots get Aiyuk, because if Aiyuk wanted to be here, he'd be here. This would be done, because the reports are the Niners are okay with Bourne and a second-round pick, maybe an extra pick added, to that offer. They have agreed on the trade parameters. Every single report, Greg, says the Patriots are willing, more than willing, to dump a ton of money. I just saw Mike Reese on SportsCenter, our buddy from ESPN, saying the Patriots are super aggressive. They are more than willing to pay Aiyuk as a top 5 receiver in the game. So here's what I'll say, and I want to get your thoughts. I know this is already happening. I've heard it in certain places. I am here to tell you, do not blame Elliott Wolf. People are going to blame Elliott Wolf. People are going to frame this as if Wolf failed or he lost. The only thing the Patriots can do is what they're doing. Here is an offer. Here's the money we're willing to pay. According to everybody, whether it's Josina Anderson, Reese, Bedard, Mayoko out there in the Bay, people that are out in the Bay Area who are not trying to do a solid for Robert Kraft, because I know some people might try to spin it that way. Mm-hmm. Everybody has said to a person, talking with their sources, the Patriots are willing to pay as much money as it takes to make Aiyuk a Patriot. And we know from Mayoko, they have an offer on the table that has been accepted by the Niners. That's all you can do. Offer a ton of money and put a package on the table that's accepted. Those two things have happened. It's now on Aiyuk.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I think throughout this offseason, and look, just to come flat out. Like I agree with you. The longer this goes on, it's not good for the Patriots. And I think the chances of him landing here are lessening by the minute as more teams get in and the dance goes on and all this stuff. And I feel a little bit bad for, Elliott Wolf and the Patriots and Patriots fans. And, because I do think they're doing things the right way as far as, personnel. We don't know much about on the field yet, but as far as like rebuilding and sort of making amends for the previous years and all the personnel missteps and things like that. And, the position that they're in now where, they don't have a number one wide receiver or a good offensive tackle. And we all knew these things were coming and were an issue, but they were just neglected for years. And I think that, you could see Wolf's plan that, okay, look, we stunk last year, so we have the third overall pick. We're taking a quarterback. And we saw that in Hard Knocks where, we're pretty content. And pretty much Wolf told us all this, that, we need a quarterback. And so it's no secret and we're going to sit and pick. So you get the quarterback. I think they were of the mind that, would they in a perfect world like to draft the wide receiver? And I think that you're going to see the movement towards that coming up in the NFL if it hasn't started already, where like you can't be paying these fees for wide receivers when, in reality, you look at the list of highest paid wide receivers, they haven't really won a whole lot team-wise in terms of once these guys got paid top of the market, is that the best thing for your team? But I think Elliott Wolf has been methodical and looks down the road and says like, all right, well, this is what we need. And so we got the quarterback and now we need the number one weapon and we need, a franchise left tackle. How are we going to get both? How you look at the NFL landscape, how can you're not going to get an offensive tackle by trade or free agency, like nobody good. I mean, just this past year, it's Tyron Smith who gets broken down all the time and like Jonah Williams, who even knows what tackle he's best at. And the Bengals didn't even want him around really anymore. And so I think they looked at it and said, all right, well, ideally we draft the wide receiver, but let's play it out. Like, all right, if we have an opportunity to secure a guy now and just pay money for it while we have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, like, let's just do that and save what we think is going to be a pretty good first round pick in 2025 for the tackle. And then and along the way, let's re-sign all our good core young players, whether that's, offensive linemen or defensive. Like, if you get May, if you get a Brandon Aiyuk type, and then you get the left tackle next year in the draft, along with everything else they're doing and promising on Jalen Polk, promising on Javon Baker, you got Pop Douglas, you got Keon White taking a step up, like, you have Christian Barmore in the fold, all those guys on defense that are the core that you have re-up. All of a sudden, all those pieces come together and you're like, especially with a year of training for Drake Maye, the Patriots in 2025 could be pretty good. You wouldn't see many holes on that roster. And now they keep trying. They keep putting their best foot forward. But, for various reasons, it appears they're going to come up short again. But I agree with you. This is no fault of Elliott Wolf. Everyone's going to play the blame game if they don't get him. And they're going to dump on whether it's the Crafts or Wolf or the situation that they're in. Like, look, it's just the situation that they're in. And timing can be everything. And right now, the timing isn't great for the Patriots, but at least you see the plan and that they're being aggressive and trying to do things. And I think if you're a fan of a team, that's all you can ask. And you just hope that in time, those plans will start to come to fruition. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you, against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. I love using Prize Picks. It's so easy. The app is fun to use. Just for an example, Julian Alvarez, I had for more than 2.5 shots, and LeBron James for more points. Kyle Schwarber for more than 9 hitter fantasy score, and Bryce Miller for more than 4 pitcher strikeouts. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
One last thing on this, Greg. I'll just add this for a minute. People will say, oh, well, they got to try harder, give up more. And it's a very delicate balancing act for Elliott Wolf, because you're still trying to rebuild. And if you give up too much, you could be shooting yourself in the ass and hurt yourself down the road. And all I'll say is, from what they have tried here, they try to pay Ridley. We know the situation, how that played out. Then during the draft, they tried to move up with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills gave them the straight arm, held them over a barrel and said, well, overpay us egregiously with picks, and then we'll maybe do a move. And the Patriots, they had different holes to fill. They didn't feel like they could give up as many picks as Buffalo was going to force them to, because they're division rivals. They don't want to help the Patriots. So they try to move up in the first round and get a deal so they can draft a young wide receiver, after being turned away by San Francisco draft weekend, according to reports, because they were trying to deal for Aiyuk all the way back in April. Now you fast forward, the one legitimate wide receiver that is available, they've put the most money on the table for him, and they've put an offer that's been accepted by San Francisco. Like, there's not much more you cannot. I've said this the whole time, and I've said this forever. You can't force somebody to say yes. You can try. You can try as hard as you can, but you can't put a gun to the forehead of Aiyuk or the Buffalo Bills or somebody else and say, you're signing this or you're okaying this. It just doesn't happen that way. Let's get to Matthew Judon quickly. I wasn't a fan, Greg, of him talking yesterday. Gerard Mayo comes out, says this is in the rearview mirror. If it's in the rearview mirror, everybody just shut up about it and let's move on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that it was not a good look for Matthew the other day. Like, I was fine with his initial press conference, the 9 minutes, basically speaking from the heart, mostly truths. The whole social media thing. We'll agree to disagree. But I thought he was honest, and Gerard Mayo gave him that opportunity to blow off steam and be honest and tell people where he stood. And, Mayo got rewarded by Matthew Judon, acting out, that whole thing. And this was the first time we heard from him. And I just thought he came across as obtuse, untruthful in multiple of his answers, and never heard the words. Now, I didn't need to say I'm sorry or I apologize, but just be like, look, and he did say something about like he didn't want to be distracting to his teammates. Well, he obviously was. It was obviously a big deal. It was obviously reflected poorly on Mayo and the organization, and I didn't think he was contrite at all about it. And instead, he threw even more of a temper tantrum. He's quoting his salary at $6.5 million, all this stuff. And then there was that. And then we come out today, and I think he came out with his helmet to start practice. But at some point, he didn't take part in practice at all. Now, he's still in good spirits on the field. But, I from what I understand, I don't think the organization is a fan of his act, and I think they're getting tired of it, and something needs to change quickly, because this is just it's a constant story. It doesn't need to be. There's a way to deal with this, and I just think he's dealing with it poorly.
I just thought they gave the story oxygen yesterday again, and over the weekend, the speculation was, hey, things could be going in a positive direction. Judon looks like he's having fun out there. Rossini came out, Diana Rossini from The Athletic, and said that, Judon and the Patriots feel like they're getting closer or whatever. It felt like there was some positive momentum. They should have just left it with the positive momentum. And then you throw him out there and he says what he said, and you go right back to square one. All right, let's talk about practice, actual on the field stuff. You want to start with Saturday. What'd you see Saturday? What stood out to you?
Saturday. And all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. Did I write something down in my notes on this? I
don't know.
I did say, let's talk about practice on Saturday. And why did I, now I'm blanking why I said that, but in any event, let's just talk about today.
All right, let's talk about today. Let's start with Juwan Bentley, who was tweaked with an injury, it looked like today. I saw you tweeting about this. What'd you see? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I noticed in practice that Juwan Bentley was having his left elbow looked at, and at first it was just the trainers, and they were looking over pretty good and poking him and pulling things and stuff like that. Then they called over a team doctor. This went on for a while, and then Bentley didn't have his helmet anymore and just watched the rest of practice. There looked to be some concern with that. I imagine they're going to do further tests, an MRI or something like that. But, when you're talking about a middle linebacker and how they have to make plays and deal with blockers and stuff like that, it's not good. I mean, we do have a while. So, say he tweaked something, plenty of time for him to deal with that. And, but hopefully I don't think they can lose him. I mean, they can, but it's not ideal, especially on the heels of Barmore and what's going on with Judon. Bentley's like, he's a leader. He's tough. He's out there all the time, plays a lot of snaps. Is he the perfect player? No, but he's good for this team, and he's gotten better every single year. And so, I'm concerned about that he's going to be out for a little bit, but hopefully it doesn't linger on into the season.
This is a little bit of an issue now with the injuries, Greg. They're starting to pile up a little bit. We talk about Bentley. Marcus Jones has missed now multiple practices. Yet again, he can't get back on the field after having a pretty damn good start of camp. Tyquan Thornton said today that he's dealing with a soft tissue issue. And yes, I love saying that because tissue issue rhyme. And then you've got offensive tackle, which Calvin Anderson has missed a practice or two. But the big one is, Chuks Okorafor has now missed 3 or 4 practices in a row. Caden Wallace today stepped out for a minute. He had to be looked at. Let's just, I guess we'll go to offensive tackle with the injury talk, because this offensive line, like many in the NFL, Greg, they're not very deep. And you can see the impact of some of these guys when they take, since Okorafor has been out, the domino effect. Are you starting to get concerned if they can't keep guys on the field, how bad it could get?
Yeah, and let's also, I don't know if you mentioned him, but Josh Uche hasn't really done much of anything this camp. He runs a lot on the rehab field, but then, doesn't take part. The offensive tackle, we're basically 3 weeks into camp. And just to let people know, to give a sort of reset. So they have the Panthers game on Thursday night. There is some sort of practice, not for the public, on Sunday. Normally that first time back after a game, it's not much. It's like a glorified walkthrough type of thing. And then we have, I think it's Monday, and then Tuesday is the joint practice with the Eagles, and that's it for public practices for all of camp. So basically for 3 weeks, we're not going to see anything of what's going on. And so the offensive tackle thing, I have no read on what they're doing. And it's hard to tell because of the injuries. Chuk's been out, as you said. Wallace got dinged up today with his left elbow. He did return to practice, but it didn't look good. He was kind of walking off the field with his arm straight by the end of it. He might miss some time coming up here. Maybe he doesn't play on Thursday night. We'll have to see how he reacts tomorrow. So Vidarian Lowe's been out there for 5 straight practices at left tackle.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that he's a bum or anything like that because, and we've talked about this before. I mean, it's hard for me to judge a lot of where these offensive linemen were, especially guys like, Tyrone Wheatley, who they already released, and Vidarian Lowe, who were traded for right before the season last year. And I think everybody knows how I felt about the offensive line coaching basically since Josh McDaniels and Carm Brasillo left for Vegas. Then it was Matt Patricia, and Matt Patricia was coaching the offensive line and the offensive coordinator with Billy Yates. That wasn't good. Then this past year, they bring in Adrian Clem, who I tried to warn people about. And, he did have a health issue that forced him off the sidelines, and that was legit. But I don't think he was really doing a lot of good work before that. And so I do think that they're getting good coaching so far. So I leave it open that Vidarian Lowe, I do think he's improved. I think he's been solid. I think that Caden Wallace has been the better left tackle. I don't know why they went off Chukwuekorfor so early. I thought he had potential there, but I mean, I think they've been throwing the tackles in a blender, and this is not ideal. They do still have time to get it settled, but no, you're a little bit worried about what's going on at tackle.
As long as they're healthy, which is a big if, I feel like the offensive line, there's a pathway to not be awful. There's a pathway to be good enough. And I would say the interior of the offensive line, even though City So also did not take part in 11-on-11s today for the most part, which is another big issue because So's actually been really good to me.
Yep.
And I'm not as good as Bedard or Evan Lazar or some of these other guys that break down offensive line play and pad level and punch and slide and kick and whatever the hell else. But just from the layman's eyes, to me, obviously Onwenu, other people have said this, he has been a monster. He has been a monster on the field.
Best player, regardless of position, by far.
Just ridiculous high level is what Onwenu's looked like at camp. So has been, I think, just behind him as far as offensive line and how they've looked. And you got David Andrews, who's kind of, yes, he's not the same guy, but he's old steady. So the good news is the interior offensive line, as long as they can stay healthy, has looked pretty damn good, which means to me, Greg, all you need, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got 4 or 5 offensive tackles that we talk about. If one of those guys can play decent football, just one, then you could help the other tackle spot.
Yep.
That's all they need. They just need one of these 4 or 5 guys to stay healthy and play average football.
Yep, absolutely. 100%. And you were hoping, you felt a little bit easier that it was going to be a core 4, and maybe he gets back out there and healthy because of his experience and, what some of the traits that he showed on film. Caden Wallace has, I think he has exceeded my expectations so far in camp. I think he's had a couple rough days. I don't know how much that has to do with the elbow, but yeah, you're just hoping that one guy sort of grabs the side. At one side, you prefer it to be left tackle, but it doesn't have to be. And then you can help the guy on the other side. It's the middle of the summer. It's hot. But you know what summer means to me? Baseball. I love going to the park. I love supporting the Old Town team. And when I want to go see my favorite team, Game Time is the perfect place to go. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets. I was just looking at the website, gametime.co. They also have the app, Game Time. I was looking, big event coming up, a New York team coming to Boston, red hot hometown team. I got to tell you, the prices are a bit pricey for the first game of the series, but guess what? On Game Time, they have these things called flash deals. So an outfield grandstand ticket that normally costs $152, it's $132, $20 off. That'll get you in the park. That'll get you a good view. nobody in front of you, no poles in front of you. That's the kind of stuff you find when you go over to Game Time. You know what I also love about Game Time? Well, there's a few things, okay? I love seeing the view from your seat on my phone before you buy. That's a must. I won't buy tickets from any place unless it has that. Game Time has it. Also, the all-in pricing shows your total cost up front. You know, you go to these other sites and you're like, oh, that's a good deal. Suddenly you get to the end and there's all these fees and taxes and other things, and all of a sudden you're paying double than what you thought. That does not happen at Game Time. So make sure you get over there. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Moving on to the quarterbacks. I know you want to talk about Drake Maye. We'll get to him in a minute, but just your overall thoughts, Greg. I think Jacoby Brissett has looked from the beginning of padded practices last Monday. I wasn't there today, but through yesterday, I'd been by 4 times. I've watched 4 padded practices with these guys. I think Brissett looks like a pretty good NFL quarterback to me. Not great, but pretty good. Clearly ahead of Drake Maye. How do you feel about Brissett's camp?
Yeah, I think he's been really good, and you know, people do have to remember that the last time he was a starter in this offense 2 years ago, he was top 10 in the league in QBR, and that was with the Browns, who, you know, I don't think had a lot of things going for them, and also he was thrust into the situation with Deshaun Watson and you know, all of that, and so I think that speaks well of Jacoby. I think the thing that stands out about him, Nick, in practice is like he's at his best situationally. We even saw it today. They had a drive where I think they had to get in the field goal range or something like that, and he came out and he was under a lot of pressure, but he was 4 for 4 and let him down the field for a field goal. And so, you know, that's impressive. Now, you know, Drake Maye and Joe Milton and other people might be more physically impressive in, say, you know, 1-on-1s or 7-on-7s and stuff like that. But when it comes to team play and situational drills, which I think are very important, he clearly stands out. And to me, just every day I have watching practice, I have more and more of a thought of, if this isn't Jacoby Brissett's team right now, it's damn close to being that way. Just, you know, the way his leadership, the way guys respond to him, like all that stuff. You look out there and it's nothing against Drake Maye, and who I think is doing fine and he's making progress. It's just, you know, you could tell he's been here before. He's 8 years in the league. He's been in this offense. Guys can come to him and he understands what they're trying to do. He delivers the ball accurately on time with good velocity. I mean, he threw a bullet to the left sideline in the end zone today to Javon Baker, who made a sensational grab. I thought it was out of bounds, but it was definitely close enough. But, you know, Jacoby knows what he's doing, and I think that breeds confidence, and you can just tell the other quarterbacks don't know what they're doing as much, which is fine, and you can understand that. And but to me, you know, there hasn't been much thought about Drake Maye just because of how good and in command Jacoby Brissett has been.
To me, Maye has pretty much come as advertised watching him. You know, the highs are very high. He'll zip a great throw here, a great throw there, and you're like, man, he'll move out to his right, extend a play, and flip a ball on the run that looks beautiful towards the sideline every once in a while. And then you'll have some other issues. You know, when he's in a 2-minute drill, he'll struggle a little bit. He'll have throws that make you kind of scratch your head and go, what was that about? Overall, to me, I feel like he has gotten better, Greg, since the first padded practice that I saw on Monday, which he looked pretty wretched, frankly, which wasn't a surprise. It was first padded practice. I think overall, though, he's gotten better. How'd you feel about watching him today, and how do you feel about him overall the last, what's it been, 9-10 practices?
Yeah, I agree. I think that he seems to get more comfortable every day. And what people need to understand is that, Drake has all these gifts, and he's naturally talented, and I think he's naturally born to play the position. And, you see that at times, especially in drills, especially in 7-on-7. I mean, he dominates 7-on-7. If NFL games were, had no offensive and defensive line, I'd be talking about him going to the Pro Bowl. But that's not the way things operate. And I think Drake won't be able to – the Drake that the Patriots need, that they believe he's going to be, where you talk about that, making plays off platform and, pulling plays out of his rear end and things like that. Like, all of that is there, but that can't come until he gets the foundation in the offense and, with his mechanics, even though I'm not as worried about that. It's more about, like, and I'm not saying he doesn't know the offense or, can't call plays in the huddle or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, that stuff, the verbiage, the understanding the routes and all this stuff, like, it has to be quick. It has to become second nature. And then he can do all the things that he can do. I mean, to me, it's very similar to Patrick Mahomes when he came in to the Chiefs, and Andy Reid's offense is complicated. There's a lot going on. And guess what? Andy Reid said he's sitting. That's what he's doing. He's sitting. He needs to learn. He needs to get the mental side. And then once he does that, then his natural gifts can take over. And guess what? After sitting for a year and starting one game, Patrick Mahomes was NFL MVP and threw 50 touchdown passes in year 2. And it's because he got that basis in the system and had that understanding that allowed him to play fast and play free. And you don't see that with Drake. You see him making progress every day, but he's not there yet. We don't know when he's going to get there. It could be that by the season opener. I have no clue. Guys learn on a different schedule. But I will say, Drake Maye had 2 unbelievable timing passes, back-to-back plays in 7-on-9 red zone today. One to Kayshon Boutte in the right corner, and then Jaheim Hines, who was back today, who was good to see. The same play in the corner, and Drake dropped just 2 perfectly in the bucket to those guys. And you're just like, holy cow, look at that. Now, why was he able to do that? Because he didn't have to think that much. He didn't have to worry about the pass rush, which him playing with the backup offensive line is not doing him any favors. Now, he's also not going against the defensive starters a lot of the time, so some of it evens out. But then you have a team period. So Jacoby Brissett gets into the same situation. They do the same situation. It's like a minute 45, something on the clock, and they got to get a field goal. Jacoby goes 4 for 4, goes down the field, leads a field goal. Drake Maye goes 0 for 4, throws an interception on his first pass, forcing a throw over the middle. It was probably on Mafi. They had a bad shotgun snap. I don't know. I think it went off his leg or something like that. But then he had 3 more throws where he's not making good decisions and he's forcing it into guys who are just covered, guys who are blanketed. And so you see the promise and you see the struggles. And the thing that I take confidence in is that I know Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo specifically know how to get him there, have a plan to get him there. Just let him go through the process.
And just for people, if you haven't been paying attention around the league, I mean, Caleb Williams is going to start for Chicago. Of course, he is first overall pick. Chicago is set up for offensive fireworks, so to speak, with what they've done around Caleb Williams. He's in much better shape to do some things. And obviously, Jaden Daniels was just named the Commanders' starting quarterback, which should not surprise anybody because many people thought that, aside from Michael Penix, Daniels might be the most pro-ready quarterback in the draft. But the other rookies that you see, J.J. McCarthy, he's not ready. He's QB2 right now in Minnesota. Sam Darnold starting as of right now. Bo Nix. Denver came out and said Jarrett Stidham right now is on the top of the depth chart at quarterback. And, of course, Penix was drafted weirdly by Atlanta, so he's behind Kirk Cousins. But this happens. These guys are young, and especially Greg and I have gone through this. We don't need to relitigate the history of Drake Maye. But he hasn't played a ton of football the last 3 or 4 years. We have to remember that. I mean, there's just a lot of new being thrown at Drake, and he hasn't consistently played football the last 3 or 4 years. So take a deep breath, give him time. Big picture, he's progressing. All right, we want to talk about preseason game quickly coming up on Thursday night. But first, want to remind you, take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, our friends at Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. You could download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. And finally, check out Bedard Giardi doing great stuff on the Patriots over at BSJ, $50 for the year. All right, Carolina comes to town on Thursday night. Drake Maye spoke with the media this morning. Sounds like all 4 quarterbacks are going to play, Greg. What do you think as far as how much each guy plays? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, Nick, sort of like all I can do is go off of like what we've seen in practice, especially today's practice, which seemed like a somewhat of a dry run for the game, sort of get certain groupings in together. And, what we saw was Jacoby Brissett worked exclusively with the starting offensive line. I don't think they held over anybody for Drake Maye. Drake Maye got some times with the twos, almost all the twos, maybe a few threes. I'm going to assume, this is a guess, I think the starters, or most of them, like you might see like David Andrews sit for like Nick Leverett. And, also remember, I think you mentioned this earlier, but City So was out today, and a bit of a surprise. He was in full pads, but Michael Jordan was out there for him today. I think that Drake Maye is going to play next, and I think he's going to play. I think Jacoby plays, if not a full quarter, upwards of a quarter. I think Maye gets a quarter, possibly into halftime, out of halftime. Then I think it's going to be Zappe, and then I think Milton's in. Zappe, I don't think will get a ton of time, maybe like a series, and then Milton will get the rest. That's my best guess.
It's really going to hurt Joe Milton's chances of starting at quarterback for this team this year if he's playing.
I know some people are going to be stunned about that.
Tough break. Look, Drake Maye, I would like to see him, Greg. I was talking about this on my podcast, the Nick Cattle Show, yesterday. But I do feel like giving Maye at least a shot, a period at practice with the ones, would be something that would be interesting. And I think maybe even needed for the rookie to trust the offensive line and maybe get a few snaps in a row that, you're not getting a crazy snap at your foot or, above your head, or there's a complete offensive line breakdown, or Mitchell Wilcox is dropping a football, or I would like to see that. My hope was, okay, well, that's not happening at practice, but maybe you sit Jacoby Brissett and you play Maye at least a drive or maybe 2 drives with some of the starting players, some of the top guys. Do you think there's a chance of that happening, or do you think this is going to be split? It's going to be cut and dry. Mayo is going to play Brissett with the starters. Those guys go out, and it's Maye in the second unit that go in.
I think the chances of that are low. And by the way, let me point out, I don't think there's any grand conspiracy on the part of Alex Van Pelt and Drake Maye to hold Drake Maye down because Jacoby Brissett might make them look better in the early going. I mean, I've been covering the National Football League for 20 years and watching on a full-time basis and watching camp practices. One of my tenets from watching over all these years, different coaching staffs and all this, is the coaches and their decisions tell you all you need to know. And we've even heard, Drake Maye say, and I don't know if this is at the podium or with Kay Adams or whatever, like, he basically has said when Drake May's ready, he'll get his chance. And, between that and what we've seen on the field, the coaches don't think he's ready. There's nothing wrong with that, but I agree with you. I was hoping these two practices before the preseason game, he might get a drive with the offensive line. And actually, I thought it might happen today, and I actually put a tweet in my drafts getting ready for when Drake Maye went out there, because there was a certain point in practice where it was strange because Jacoby Brissett went out there with the starters for, 6-7 plays, and then suddenly they went to the backups. And I've seen this before. Belichick used to do this when Cam Newton and Mac Jones were here. They would do that because they were giving the starting offensive line a breather to go back out there with Mac. So I thought, here we go. We're going to see it with Drake. Didn't happen. And so my advice is just believe what the coaches are telling you and trust in what the coaches are telling you. And, I feel a little bit bad because if Drake gets that opportunity, it's probably going to be behind closed doors after the Eagles preseason game. But you never know. If he goes out there, Nick, I will say this. If he goes out there and plays really well and shows that he could show the coaches on Thursday night that, okay, maybe he's not the greatest practice player in the world, but when the lights go on, he's a gamer and he looks completely different. All of a sudden the coaches go back and they watch the film and they're like, that's interesting. Maybe it's time to give him a couple snaps with the starters this week. Maybe Monday's practice before the Eagles, let's take another look at it. And then maybe against the Eagles in the joint practice, maybe we give him a shot with the starters at one point. So it's a fluid situation, but as of right now, I don't think that's the plan, but Drake can change the plan at any point.
Yeah, I have wondered that. A couple of things, practice, these practices, these padded practices, it's all structured. It's all scripted. There are reasons why coaches do certain things. Drake came out last week and his first padded practice on Monday, like I said, was wretched. He came out a couple days later and said, well, Monday's practice was all 3rd and long. That was the script. The quarterbacks were working off of 3rd and long. That was the idea of the practice, which obviously does kind of impact when you have that context, Drake's performance that day. It doesn't excuse everything, but it makes a little bit more sense. The defense, I know Evan Lazar has said the defense playing a lot of cover 2, at least early in camp.
Yep.
And it seems like they're kind of forcing Drake Maye to take the easy stuff underneath, which is smart. It's the idea of don't force it downfield. Let's make sure that he's got the basics down. He's taking the easy stuff underneath if he sees these defenses and doesn't try to, fit a tough throw when he shouldn't. So we have to keep that in mind. And also, I do wonder, do you think we'll see a better Maye? Because it's not going to be as scripted. It's not going to be as almost handcuffed in the game on Thursday night versus what he's been doing at camp, which is a lot of, hey, footwork, the simple stuff. Let's make sure the basics are figured out.
I do. I think Maye's going to pop on Thursday night, and I think that's going to be a storyline coming out of the game.
Oh, I love that. That's a tease. We're going to leave it there. We'll see what happens on Thursday night. Greg and I have not discussed this, but I'm guessing we will do a pod after the game, so we'll have a reaction at some point on Friday or whatever it is. It's been a little crazy. It's been busy for Greg for sure. So that's that. We'll go into Thursday night. Carolina, the Patriots. If you're excited to see Bryce Young, get rid of that excitement because Jack Plummer, not Jake Plummer, will be playing that game.
Not the snake. I'd rather see the snake.
So we'll talk to you after the game. We'll see how things go. Till then, be well.